him on 3 or 4 times, and he's coming back on next Friday.
Yeah, he's sort of like
He's a regular.
our part-time regular host.
That's cool.
Yeah, he's a really cool person.
So,
One of our
so
first big interviews, really.
Yeah, yeah, really. I think he was the first political interview that we did. All right, so we're getting ready to go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I messed up and recorded on the cloud, but that's okay. That'll be emailed to me. All right, welcome to the show, everybody. This is the Story of America of me, your host, DeAndre Pace, and co-host Rhett Williams. Today, we are interviewing the chair of the Mississippi Libertarian Party, Mario Lozano. Um, Mr. Lozano, go ahead and introduce yourself to us, and really introduce um, our viewers to the Mississippi Libertarian Party. I think now that, as we were just talking a moment ago, now that Palazzo is sort of out of the picture,
yeah,
and we know we still have to deal with Johnny Dupree, depending on whether Ezel defeats him or not, or you guys candidate gets in there and does it too. That opens up the door to a lot of stuff down here on the coast
yes.
for as far as the political landscape. So I think it's best if we know a little bit about you and know a little bit about the party and what to expect out of the party, and why should somebody in South Mississippi, particularly the fourth district, why should they be interested in the Libertarian Party?
Okay. So, like I said, my name is Mario Lozano. I've been chair since February. Before that was Vicky Rose. She's a pretty awesome person, but it turned out it was my turn. It was like, in terms of, they said, who wants to do it? Raise my hand. They're like, okay, you're the guy. It was a unanimous vote, about 30 people. So that's pretty cool. Libertarian Party, if people don't know what Libertarian is, it's in the name, it's liberty, freedom, trying to go back to the roots of the founding fathers, going back to purest of all the rights. Like freedom of speech is cool. It's like you'd be able to say whatever you want with, make sure there's that freedom of speech doesn't mean consequence free, but it does mean there should be no kind of censorship. If you say something stupid, I'm gonna call you out and say that's stupid, you know. And so, yeah, it's about don't hurt nobody, don't take their stuff. That's the nap. Um, Mississippi LP, to my knowledge, I think it started in the 90s by 3 or 4 guys in the library. So yeah, I think it really got started when the Ron Paul revolution really kicked off. That's when a lot of people said,
Yeah.
I did not leave the Republican Party, they left me. And then that's where a lot of the core of the Mississippi LP is come folks who were mad that Ron Paul wasn't their nominee.
So it's heavily. See, I wanted to ask you about this. Is the Mississippi Libertarian Party on board with the Mises Caucus?
I am not as a whole. We have individuals are, some people aren't. I'm not gonna speak for everybody and say as a whole party we are because we're not. We just left it to individually and say if you like it, fine. This person doesn't. That's cool.
Right. Well, I personally see the Mises Caucus as the core of the philosophy of libertarianism. And I think it was really just because of the backlash that the Libertarian Party was starting to become infected with the strain of progressivism.
Yes, I agree, 100%. And
Yeah,
so,
and that's one of the questions that I have, because I think one of the reasons why we see down here in the South, particularly the strong belt of republicanism, uh, is the hesitation to go towards any other party that espouses essentially the same things. I mean, you and Rhett, members of the Libertarian Party. I'm a member of the Mississippi Constitution Party. But the when you go out and you try to get people to vote for those parties, they they see anything that's not contemporary conservatism as being a part of the left, as a part of the Democrats, particularly when the Libertarian Party, when liberals, the way we know them today, as opposed to classical liberals, have essentially taken over the term. And so, how do you convince people, or maybe convince is too strong a word? How do you persuade people to give the Libertarian Party a chance and not lump it in with this radical extremism that comes from the left and also on the right? There's a lot of radical extremism on the right as well.
If they
That
hadn't co-opted the term, I think we would probably still be called liberals.
That's fair. Yes, absolutely. Because libertarian, liberal, the root word is the same.
Yeah.
And also the other thing with the left, they will take terms and then they want to use whatever word they want, whatever definition for whatever word they want.
Right.
So, yeah, liberal, classical liberal, this means you don't want monarchy. That's the whole deal. Is like, don't want kings. We want to be a republic, that kind of thing. That's what original liberal was. Personally, I'm a classical liberal. I'm an LP, but as far as philosophy, that's where I stand.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want zero government, but I don't want to be able to notice that government's there. I don't want it in my everywhere I look. I mean,
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that point. I philosophically view myself also as a classical liberal. Party affiliation is LP, just like you. But as far as like out of the major parties, I'm more likely to vote for a Republican. I'll never vote for a Democrat. I never have. And it's not because there aren't some Democrats that I like. There's a few, but they're not running here. And the party as a whole is just, I don't think it's salvageable at this point.
well, to
it's
me, it
gotten
depends
so
what
bad out
election
here,
we're
it
talking
really
about.
has.
Because like primaries, I tend to vote Democrat. I mean, I'm Republican. I tend to vote Republican when I'm doing primary because I'm just anti-establishment at that point. Like get rid of Palazzo. The easiest way to get rid of Palazzo is defeat him in the primary. So
Right.
and then let's say if he had won and we didn't have Alden, I probably would vote Democrat. We have Alden so that we have an actually solid choice. So we don't have to cover.
I wasn't
Still pick somebody that's solid.
I'm not really a fan of Mikey Zell.
Yeah, he scares the hell out of me.
I thinking hopefully it just let's say the worst happens, he gets in there. We could get him just be a single term person, that'd be the best after that.
It would be, but it never sometimes it does work out that way. If like Madison Cawthorn, for instance, he was defeated in his primary and he was a one term, but it's rare. Usually they serve more than once. Just incumbents tend to, you know how elections go.
Yeah, but fortunately we've got rid of Palazzo. But here's one of the biggest things here about down here. What is the platform of the Libertarian Party for South Mississippi? Because that's one of the things that really scared a lot of people when I was running for office down here, is they didn't understand what the platform of the party was. So what platform do you think represents the party, and how do you think that resonates with South Mississippians?
So we just legalized medical marijuana in Mississippi, and so talking about, let's pick a topic. So drug war, and so our view on drug war is it should not exist, kind of thing. And so Easel, he's a sheriff. He doesn't like the fact that we legalized medical marijuana, so it's gonna be some pushback there. He's at least accepts the fact that we, the people, voted for it. We didn't get that from Plaza, but I think he's still going to be a barrier as far as implementing some of that stuff and helping people. I mean, body autonomy is about where we put your body, it's your business. You want to smoke, that's your deal. And then it goes beyond other stuff, but yeah, the drug war. We don't think drug war helps people with dealing with addiction. Drug war does not help fix those problems the way they address it. And so I think most people who have drug issues belong in a hospital, not in prison, where they're being taken advantage of the drug dealers, just get them to do things they wouldn't do normally because they know they have that addiction thing, so they can do what they want. So go to hospital setting, you guys get treatment.
I agree with abolition of the drug war, but I think the problem of the party, the Libertarian Party, is its messaging on the subject. It doesn't really do a good job of explaining why. And most people hear drug legalization and it scares them for obvious reasons.
Yeah, yeah.
But, you know, the problem is I don't think most people can understand. You have to say it in such a way that people grasp what you're saying. Like, the war on drugs is a giant waste of your money, and it locks up plenty of nonviolent offenders for ridiculous reasons, takes away their gun rights, and forgot where I was going with this. It empowers cartels, so there's always going to be a thriving black market for anything that you make illegal, obviously. And the problem is decriminalization actually makes it worse than legalization would, because decriminalization creates open air drug markets like you have in Oregon now. But full legalization would actually get rid of the cartels entirely. But then you have to tackle the fact that, well, basically what would happen is that it would become another legal pharmaceutical industry. And that's a difficult, I think it's better than what we have now, but it's still a problem that we would have to really sit down and figure out how to regulate this. How are we going to make this as the best result possible? Like,
So
you know what
I
I'm
think
saying?
do the focus on marijuana specifically, because we deal with the other stuff later down the road, because just legalizing marijuana by itself, I don't think it's harmful to anybody, or I do think that marijuana, a lot of people who are anti-drug will say, hey, we'll at least give you that one. I mean, the other drugs, people are like, well, that's complicated because there's addiction attached to the stuff. Well, marijuana, let's legalize that. And one thing is about medical marijuana, a lot of people are using that to get off the harder shit. And so we legalize medical marijuana, some of the trouble comes with the harder stuff might alleviate
Right.
some of that.
I also think that the Libertarian Party's messaging on the issue of abortion, and the reason why it's been all over the place is because libertarians are all over the place on the issue.
Yeah.
There's no solid agreement on it. And some people, especially here, they think that the Libertarian Party supports it, which is just, it's not really true.
Abortion and the borders are probably the two topics that we within the LP work amongst
I would
ourselves.
agree. It's the most contention on those issues.
Yeah, some of them are open borders, some aren't. And so we point to the core libertarianism, individualism. And so it's not that we're a collective. We don't say, hey, you're part of a party, you have to believe this way. If you don't tell people, oh, we don't have any. We do have people who try to be purists or whatever, not really libertarian or that baloney-ness, but that's not part of the deal. It's like, okay, you can be pro-life, pro-choice, and you can argue with it and respectfully. Let's actually have a real debate about that stuff, not just shut each other off and
Right.
stuff.
Which is, I think, the primary, like for example, Roe being overturned, it actually opened the debate back up instead of, because when Roe was decided, it was closed. That was it. There's no debate anymore. We're just going to allow it.
Is the states that automatically ban abortion without the discussion. I have issues with that.
Well, some of those states had those laws on the books before Roe was decided initially.
Okay. So
but not all of them.
So, okay.
Like Mississippi, for example, we didn't have that law, but it's 15 weeks, and that's perfectly reasonable. That's more liberal than France, which is 12 weeks.
Yeah. As for that specific topic, there's a gentleman from Mises Institute, which is different from the Mises Caucus, but in Mises Institute, but a guy named Walter Block, and he talks about he got pro-life, pro-choice, but he thought of a different third way, and it's like really just a third way, but he thought of it. It's called evictionism. His idea is the woman has every right to make the baby come out of her at any time, but does not have the right to kill it afterwards. And so the process of the abortion as it is, I think it's disgusting how we take it out of pieces. That's gross.
Yeah.
That should not be the case. But his idea was like the medical tech we have for people, babies who are born prematurely, they can be applied to babies who woman doesn't want to be pregnant anymore. They can still
Right.
apply those premature medical deals and keep the baby alive and develop.
I do think that we will get to a point where we can, the baby's gestation can occur 100% outside the womb from start to finish. At that point, I think abortion will be completely outlawed everywhere, because at that point, there's no arguments left.
And it's just determined pregnancy. It's not the. I think we're agreed part. The part of it, ending the child's life is the issue. And
Yes.
so evicting the baby. Well, if it's too early and it's not going to live anyways. There's one thing. Well, if you're close to the end of the semester and just kill it anyways, that's not okay.
Right. Why? Like, why kill the baby? If it could, especially if it's viable, that really is murder at that point.
Yeah.
I guess in that circumstance, for someone like me who is not a member of the Libertarian Party, the messaging of the party is rather scattered, rather confusing. For example, we had Alden on the show a lot of times, and I like Alden. I like a lot of the things he's talked about. But when we talk about issues on the economy, well, the answer is always going to be the free market economy is the best economy that you can use. However, the messaging on it, when you start to go in with more complicated and convex issues, there has to be more of an answer than just that to somebody who, again, like me, is not part of the party, but is deeply concerned, deeply involved when it comes to economic decisions.
Yes.
So I guess my question would be, if you were going to try to get a new voter out of me, how would you convince me to become a member of the Libertarian Party, or to convince somebody like me to become a member of the party?
So, well, like we're doing now, conversation, talking to each other, and so it all starts with a conversation. Because if I don't know you, I don't know what your issues are. So it's hard for me to come towards you and say a perfect stranger, and just assume that we're on the same page. The organic, the grassroots. This whole point why grassroots is so important. You talk to people on either front doors or in community, or go to events. Like maybe there's a city fair, whatever. Just going down to them and talking to them one-on-one to see what their issues are. And then you say, okay, I really care about schools. How does a libertarian feel about schools? Our feel is part of freedom is responsibility. And so you're responsible for the education of your kids. And so you shouldn't just throw it to the state and just let them, like, I don't like the state teaching my kid this, that, and whatever. But at the end of the day, the responsibility of your kid is you. You, the parent, have the full responsibility of the kid. And so freedom is cool, but it's also about responsibility. And so making sure that you take all the red tape, whatever laws, whatever. At the end of the day, it's not. We don't want education. We want kids educated. It's about having parents reclaim the responsibility over the children that they're supposed to have in the first place.
Well, see, in other words, that's very similar to the same thing that the Republicans are talking about. They just won a number of seats and issues, all based around school choice, and school choice was a big issue way back in the 70s and 80s amongst Republicans, and I would say probably amongst the Libertarians. I'm not sure if it was as big as an issue amongst the Libertarians then as it is now, but one of those bigger issues has come to the light, where the way the country sees the party
Mhm.
on that issue is an abjection of responsibility, whereas the party tells us that it's about assuming responsibility.
Yes.
But when we see in the public image, again, this is most likely due to the hijacking of the terminology by the far left. When we see the party itself, everything is about the ejection of the responsibility. For example, the I don't even know if you call this libertarianism, but the liberal movement back in the 70s, really the sexual liberation movement, which has now been credited for the rise in sexually transmissible diseases, teenage pregnancies, and abortions amongst the youth, is all directly related to that, because they took that responsibility away from parents, and
Yeah.
now the party seems to have done a 180 and it's given that responsibility back to the parents. And how do you break the confusion of what the party stood for then as to what it stands for now? How do you get around that?
I think what people did was, I mean, Western history has been more about getting away farther and farther away from the church. Church as the organization, not so much religion, but as far as having pastors and priests telling you how you're supposed to live your life. And they threw that away and gave that responsibility to the state. And we're like, no, that's not what we meant. We meant you yourself, full responsibility, not the state, not the church, but you as an individual need to be in charge of your life, take responsibility of your freedoms and stuff like that. Like you talk about Second Amendment and that kind of deal. So your rights are your own responsibility to take care of. You can't just say, oh, we have police and firefighter, police and soldiers to help us. That's fine, that's cool. But it comes to your own house, in your own territory, the responsibility of protecting your freedoms. That's why you need to be politically engaged in this stuff. Like actively vote, actively go see, ask questions to these candidates before it's time to vote. Actually get involved in your grassroots local parties and whatnot.
And so what do you think is the right now? What do you think is going to give the Libertarian Party an advantage over the other parties? What is the crucial issue that the Libertarians are campaigning on right now that is giving them more credibility than the other parties?
So with guns, we don't like red flag laws. We don't think should be any kind of rules against people, well, very little rules about people gun ownership and that kind of thing. I mean, even though a lot of Republicans are starting to cave into the red flag laws, and so we're like, no, that's not the way it should be. It's supposed to be. The Second Amendment means you have freedom to everything that's available. You know, that's one issue. I don't think there's a single issue that's it. This is the one. I think it's more of just how we approach things. We're more likely to actually talk and not yell at each other. I think that actually engaging debate without saying, "Oh, you're anti-Trump or anti-Biden," and just as soon as see a few buzzwords and we're done talking. I think we're actually the fact we're more open to actual debate and communicating and talking to people. I think that's it. I think that fact that we're respectful towards the people we disagree with. Just leading by example and just saying, hey, respecting the golden rule, that kind of thing. I think a lot of people talk about how we're divided as a country and then throw out the whole respect thing agree to disagree. That's not an expression either side is really using. It's like, I disagree, then we'll just shut you off. People are disowning their families because they're a different political group. I think the thing that number one thing for LP is we're open to about individuality, and so we're open to actual discussion, not just shut people off because we don't agree with them.
Do you think that that by not having a centralized focus plan and focusing on the individuality, that it makes the Libertarian Party a more intimidating party to choose because of the lack of structure that the other parties have.
Maybe a little bit. I mean, but the lack of the structure the other parts have is how they built the states in the first place. The structure is what we're actually opposing. I mean, when you're trying to bring down one less government, that means you're gonna tell some folks in some department, you guys don't have work anymore. You know, and let's say talking about the IRS or the Fed and saying, hey, you're not gonna be part of the government anymore, you're gone. That's the telling folks that you don't have work no more. And so the structures that they have is why we're in this mess in the first place. So that to get where we're going, we're gonna need to do some deconstruction on some of these structures, some of the left and right have built. And so I think that's
I think the Libertarian Party is actually very structured, but it's the problem that people have the perception of it they have is because it has been so divided historically. But at this recent convention, the Mises Caucus just took over the party. So we actually probably are going to start to see some big differences coming soon. The Mises Caucus is like the Libertarian wing of the Libertarian Party. They were spawned from the Ron Paul Revolution. And mostly they're pro-life, loosely speaking, but the Mises Caucus is the anti-woke wing.
Yes. I would say that's one thing we did. When they didn't just take a little bit, they took everything. I feel like even the janitors who run the headquarters now are part of Mises Caucus. That's how much they want everything. So
every single position.
Yes. I mean, we started off with the agenda in the beginning of the meeting. They were able to set their agenda right off the bat, and then just they just took everything. As I was joking, I feel like even janitors and plumbers now Mises Caucus that work for them now.
Yeah, I think Angela McArdle, she won like 70% of the vote.
Yes, and a lot of times with LP, sometimes with the votes like that, you have to do multiple rounds, and I think she won the first round.
Yeah, that's pretty definitive there.
Yeah.
So your perception, DeAndre, is you're probably going to start to see some actually big changes.
Yeah. I mean, they've only did this in May, towards the end of May. It's July now. They've only been in power for a month. So those changes might have already been, the ball is probably already rolling. It's just it's the background, so we're not seeing those changes. Like membership, I know when Angela McArdle was on Tim Pool, I was looking at my email for MSLP's new membership. In the course of that interview with Tim Pool, that we had like 2 or 3 new members join the MSLP, and so we got direct growth from that. And so things like that is going to help us too.
Yeah, I saw that. That's actually, that interview is where I discovered her.
Mm-hmm.
And then I watched one of her interviews with Michael Malice. And I like her. I think she's got good ideas, and I think she's probably going to take the party in the right direction. But so when did you say you go ahead?
She also has good support. I mean, you got Dave Smith on her side. You have Ron Paul himself was, when we were doing the thing in Reno, we had one night was just for the Mises Caucus, and Ron Paul came to our event. So he basically, when he was there, he basically it's like he passed the baton officially to Dave Smith, and that was pretty cool. And so Dave Smith,
I really like Dave Smith.
Yeah, he has Ezra's back, and having backing, like strong backing like that. I mean, to make a movement, you need to have the support, and she definitely has that. So it was just her by herself, it'd be one thing, but she's not by herself. There's a solid support system with her that's helping her out.
Yeah. So when did you say you took over as the Mississippi chair?
In February. So February we did our state convention in Gulfport. What was it, Gulfport?
Yeah, Alden invited us, but we didn't make it because we didn't have any way to get there. But we would have gone.
So we did that, and then we picked our delegates to represent Mississippi. I was one of them, and there's five other folks that we picked. We had some alternates, but at the end of the day, it was 6 people from Mississippi went to Reno to represent Mississippi, MSLP in the chair. And I think I was the only one who was solid with the whole, actually, Mises Caucus friendly. The other folks were the varying degree of anti-Mises Caucus. I don't think Alden's pro Mises Caucus.
Yeah, I think Alden's definitely wrong on some issues.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, I mean fundamentally wrong, because I've seen some of his posts, and we just haven't had him back on again for me to ask him about that stuff. But like, it's like constitutional issues that are just completely opposite of what the Constitution says. But, that's fine if he wants to. I like Alden, but I do think he's wrong on some things.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the freedom of being libertarians. You're allowed to say, hey, we're about the party principle. So if a guy says something that's just crazy, you say, hey, I don't like that. That's not me. You speak for yourself. Don't speak for the whole crew when you said it, whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas
but when it comes down to it, the party has to have a consistent message to get across, even if it is, each person might be idiosyncratic in their own way. There still has to be a unified message at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I think that the Mises Caucus is probably going to do a great job of putting that message out there to the masses.
Yes. And it might need tweaking, but that's fine. That's how we get debate and stuff. Like I said, we're open to talking to people. I think that's our biggest strength, is that we're not yelling at each other. We're just saying, hey, we're working together. Let's get this done. Go. I mean, we all want to shrink the government. That's one thing we have all in common. Every libertarian wants to shrink the government. How small you want it? Everybody wants to get off the bus sooner, different times, whatever. Some people want to go all with anarchists. Some people want a little less than that. But we all want the shrinking the government. That's one thing we could say for sure we all want as LP.
See, to me, I completely understand anarcho-capitalists and why. At one point, I would have considered myself that, but I also know that even if you're a minarchist, the problem is government has the tendency to accumulate more power over time, and that's inevitable. So the only way to prevent a government getting bigger is to not have one at all. But that also presents its own set of problems. So it's a difficult issue, really, because I don't think it's possible to stop a government from getting any bigger. No. You could shrink it, but then it's just going to grow again.
Yeah. So, as I said, men are classical liberals. So I don't think we could get to a point where there's absolutely no government ever. I mean, you get periods of anarchy. I mean, every transition from one government to the next has a period of anarchy.
It's also the word anarchy has scary connotations historically as well. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's the right word to use, because people automatically assume that you're just like a punk rock, criminal kid that just wants to create crimes. But the philosophy is actually very developed. If you look into it, it's not just like there's no authority and there's no order. That's not what it is at all. But it's so hard to explain that to people.
Well, I guess to an outsider looking in, when we think of the anarchy part of it, again, it goes back. I mean, I know I've said this like 3 times already, but it really goes back to the fact that your party is just overshadowed by the fringe. Because when we think of anarchy, we think of what happened in the Chaz zones, where they had literal anarchy, where it was, but it wasn't an anarchy in a sense of chaotic good. It was just chaotic evil. I mean,
well, it depends on where it is, because at the point where there's no central controlling power like a state, then the culture has to be morally oriented in a positive direction. And so you can't just, in a place like Somalia, obviously it's just going to break down very quickly. The social fabric will just, because there's no warlord in
other countries. Since you brought up an other country, I do want to bring up this because it just happened in the news. I think yesterday, with pretty much the overtaking of the Sri Lankan government. I'm not saying that we're going to have anything similar like that to here in the United States, but considering the oppression of government is what led to this overtaking of the government in Sri Lanka. Uh, to both of you, since you're both the libertarians here, what do you think is the likelihood of America reaching some breaking point like that? Because me and Red have been talking about this for a while. Well, we're at a breaking point, but yet still nothing gets done because people are still too afraid to go off of the honor guard and do a convention of states and pretty much reset the canvas.
So
And
I think
so,
the point will be hunger and inflation. Like more governments have been overthrown because of the price of bread. And so have inflation gets to the point where more and more people are hungry, that's gonna trump their fear. And
Yeah.
so if that comes to people are willing, having to say, hey, my choices are to engage in some kind of theft or starve. I mean, the breakdown is gonna happen when it comes to that. And so inflation, depending on how our president or governors respectively, even local government, and we learned through COVID, even local government, you have to pay attention to every level of government because you might have a cool governor and then a shitty mayor, and then the mayor says what's fucking this shit up. I mean, a lot of places and countries, across the country, even like New York, you have a solid, they say it's a solid blue state, but it really just means New York City. You go outside New York City, go out to like Albany or other areas, they're more red. Like everybody has
yeah,
their
the only real red areas in New York is New York City and right around Buffalo. Everything else is red.
yeah.
You mean blue areas?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Did I say red
Well,
areas?
that's how most of the country is. Rural areas that are outside big cities are mostly red.
Mhm.
But that's
I
just
mean,
because they have a different way of life, and this is the whole reason for federalism and a Republican government and the Electoral College.
Mhm.
It's because people don't live the same in different places.
Yeah.
yes, and statistically speaking, the most blue state in the entire union is Massachusetts, which from where Massachusetts started, you would not. I think John Adams would be rolling over in his grave to see how Massachusetts has become from where it began as a state.
And there's also
Yeah,
different shades of blue. You get the blue dog. Democrats don't see the same thing as the socialists and progressives that run their party right now.
Yeah, but they're, at this point, if
I
you're
see
like
very little
somebody like
difference.
Joe Manchin is
Mhm.
obviously different, but his party is completely, I mean, he's like the only one.
Mhm.
Him and
Like
to a
Gene
degree,
Taylor was
cinema.
defeated for that reason.
Mhm.
And then you take a look at Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, she was part of that, but heck, she's become more of a Republican than anything. I mean, she
Mhm.
gets more time on Fox than she does on any other of the major news networks. It's just because she doesn't fit the Democrat bill anymore.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think her
but
run as president woke her up big time. Her run as president probably is what red pilled her more than anything else.
Yeah, I would say that because she was basically, they say that they want a woman of color,
Mhm.
but not her.
Yeah.
I mean,
They want a woman
yeah,
of color that's still on a program and still doing that they can control
right.
and do. He definitely was never that person.
Anybody who's bought into that being their identity is on board with the program because most people don't first think of themselves by, what their race is.
Yeah.
It's like you're an individual.
Yes.
Those are secondary characteristics that are immutable and it's not really part of who you are. It's just what you look like.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose culturally it could be part of who you are, but it's really anybody who's an individual thinker is not fit for the progressive woke movement. And that's really what the issue is.
I'm gonna turn my light in here. Give me a second.
All right.
Red, that was
There we go.
something that we discussed on Friday's show. You should have, wish you could have been part of it. But oh, I guess the show I did Friday kind of ties into this a little bit, because of the issue of the Libertarian Party being about individualism. Um, a lot of people also fear that that degree of individualism opens up areas for which certain actors can become part of the party that might make it distasteful for other people to join. For example, um, one of the people that I talked to the other day identifies as a postmodern liberal, um, as a libertarian, but their entire reasoning for being libertarian, their entire reasoning for being conservative, is the preservation of white nationalism, which, and I quote, because his definition of white nationalism isn't actually anything to do with white people, as a more as American culture itself,
Yeah.
which I find to be a big problem with a lot of the people in this so-called white nationalism movement. It's more about American culture than white people in itself when you actually break it down. But because of those negative connotations being associated with the idea of individualism that is associated with libertarianism, um, how how do how do we, as a party, how do you get away from that negative connotation to the idea of individualism?
So there's some parts of freedom are not pretty. That's just part of the deal. Like I think repulsive speech is disgusting, but still part of freedom. I mean, then rock music has a lot of satanic imagery. That's part of their freedom of speech. They're allowed to have that. Rap music might have stuff that you might not like as an individual, but that's still part of freedom of speech, is allowed to have whatever you want in your music. And so there's some aspects of freedom that is ugly, but the whole point of it is being able to hold things accountable and to be able to say, okay, being freedom to reject it. I mean, if government, when they do something we don't like, we're just stuck with it. And we just deal with it until we vote them out, or we just bite our teeth. Where somebody talk about freedom, assuming we don't like, we say we don't like it, and it's a lot easier to reject it and move on. Whereas if, like taxes, for instance, we're stuck with things that we don't like from government, from every day-to-day life. And there's some things the way they deal with adoptions, the system of adoption is pretty ugly right now. It needs to be fixed. And so when it's dealing with things that's negative or we might not like, it's easier to point a light, hey, this is something we don't like and we don't approve it. Let's get rid of it. As opposed to something's institutionalized, you're just stuck with it until the institution's gone.
Okay. And so one of my other big issues that we all always talk about here now is, again, on the issue right now of the economy. I just seen some numbers today with with inflation. Um, Again, you were pretty spot on the mark about the hunger issue. That's precisely the reason why Sri Lanka is doing what it's doing. It's because they've starved because of what happened with the COVID lockdowns, and they, you know, they have no food. They can't afford to purchase food from other countries because they have no money. And so here within the States, uh, free market capitalism is what I believe to be the best system that we can use. But we have such a dissonance, and I guess this is the two different types of liberals: are the liberals that say that free market is everything, and the liberals that say that socialism is everything. Um, which side of that coin does the Libertarian Party most closely represent, and how do you
I definitely more free
are
market and laissez-faire in terms of regulations. Just most of it is just price fixing, and price fixing does not allow for market to do its thing. Sometimes like minimum wage. Some people, like if your minimum wage is put across the board, it seems fair to say, hey, let's set a price to say, oh, this is how you have to pay your employees. When you look at it, when you're starting a business, a lot of times If you use your own business, you're not paying yourself. It's just a hobby or something you're hoping will turn into something. It might take a while before you're trying to profit. So you're not actually say, hey, your employees have to make this much, but you haven't turned to profit yet. That I think some of the things like minimum wage needs to be gone so that people who are starting have more wiggle room to get things going. Like you start your own business, your employees are going to be your friends or family who are working together, helping each other to get this dream to go. But the minimum wage telling how much you have to pay for them, you might not be able to afford that at the moment. And that may be part of why your business fails, because you just don't have enough money to pay your employees who are willing to they're prepared to help you out and to get this dream going. But it's like the price of doing business, like minimum wage, where if you had no minimum wage or adjusted differently, so that small businesses won't have to be a barrier for entry. I think that would be better for help and move somewhere. It depends on government, because it will help, or even some of the bigger businesses who are basically government themselves can take so many subsidies, like Coca-Cola, for instance. They take so much subsidies from government. They basically are government. They try to act like they're a private company, but when you get that much interaction with the government, you really are an extension of government at that point. And so small businesses are part of opening the doors to where it can be more free. And so when there's barriers to entry to that hurts us all.
What I mean here is of the different factions in the Libertarian Party as it relates to the economy, how do you convince the side that says that moving more towards a socialist government is more advantageous to Americans than it is to move towards more laissez-faire?
Well, part of it is they just want to force people to do things that they want to do. And a lot of them is, a lot of folks come from like, I don't know, they just like, we come from like a, I don't know, privileged, progressive background where you always have somebody taking care of you. You just want more people to take care of you, like government, so they just do that job for you. And it's like when we pay people to not go to work during COVID, it's just more extension of that kind of stuff. That's there's no production to be done. Just not achieving anything just by saying, oh, let's just share everything by force. Someone has to make that thing that we have to share. We want to share it. And it's the best way to do that is through laissez-faire, because say you put a price to it, then you can divvy it up better. Opposed to everybody just takes a piece. I mean, you've ever had roommates and say, hey, I'm sharing this bag of chips. The bag of chips doesn't last long. You say, hey, this bag of chips are for people who have put into it, and I'm going to just use this barter system. That bag of chips lasts a little bit longer. And you just say, hey, I'll just share because it's there. And so, yeah, forced sharing is what I feel like socialism is. It's just forced sharing. And it doesn't take a part of that. Some people probably don't need the help, but they're going to take advantage of it anyways. Like corporate welfare, when they pay millions of dollars for a company to come to their town or a sports field, like Yankees or whatnot, they just use the taxpayers' money to build a new Yankee stadium. I don't think that's like forms of socialism right there. That doesn't help people.
Yeah, I just wanted to add this because I think a lot of people have this view that the Libertarian Party is this kind of Ayn Rand individualism.
Mm-hmm.
I don't particularly like Rand,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think she was that good at messaging either, because she didn't really mean selfishness as we think of selfishness when she used it as but I have a quote here that I just remembered and I had to go and find it. But our view of individualism is become skewed because of our material wealth. And so egotistical freedom and mechanistic collectives are both dead ends, as they will be. The qualifying objectives do violence to man's spiritual essence. Thus, the writer scorned for the scientific utopia of the radical populist, with his belief that reason can rule man and society can be perfected through each man's pursuit of his enlightened self-interest. Real individualism involves self-transcendence and offers the only free path to fraternal community. It is the way of Christ, voluntary, fully conscious self-sacrifice for the benefit of all. So real individualism in the classic sense was not just doing whatever makes you feel good.
Yeah.
It's actually finding your purpose in within yourself, taking responsibility for everything you do and orienting yourself toward making everything better for everyone in the process.
Yeah, goes back to the Greeks, where they didn't go with the happiness doctrine like modern America does. It was about finding your purpose and doing that the best as you can. Fulfillment is far more important than happiness. And focusing on working your hardest, whether you're a shoemaker or airplane pilot, you're doing your best, doing your job, because you found your purpose, found your goal in life, and doing that the best you can. Not just, oh, I'm gonna eat cake because I like cake. It's just focusing
the best way to, I think the best messaging for the Libertarian Party would be to focus on personal responsibility rather than hedonistic individualism like most people think of it, because there is a personal responsibility deficit in our society and it's lacking in the public sphere. And that is something that I think a lot of people are really dying to hear.
Yes. I think that's why, like Jordan Peterson, the psychologist, why he's just telling his one of his taglines that people tease about is like, go clean your room. And he's like, it's all about, people want to change the world, but the one thing you can really change is yourself. Like say you're overweight, go exercise and go lose weight and eat healthier. You can actually do a deal so you see a little bit change in yourself a little bit every day. And then it gets to the point where, wow, look at all I did, the fulfillment factor. And then you have other people, friends who are overweight, they'll turn to you and be inspired and say, what was your tips? How did you do? What exercise did you do? What food did you eat? You tell them, hey, this is how I got to my happiness. This is how you can get there too. And so you start inspiring people to move, exercise, or inspiring them to, that's why the rags to riches stories, no matter how many times we tell them, no matter whether it was a superhero movie, cowboy movie, doesn't matter. It's a rags to riches story. Why they emulate so much is they go, oh, I want that too. I have rags. I mean, now I want the riches. So how'd you get there? And so that's why these stories are so prevalent. Like you talk about like Carl Jung or Plato and their archetypes and the forms. That's why these stories over and over again, because people want to know, my life sucks, how do I fix it? We're like, oh, you can do drugs and just ignore it, or you can actually focus on your issue, do the shadow work that Carl Jung talks about, and actually see the deep core of what the problems are, and actually address them so you can not hurt anymore, as opposed to just numbing it and doing drugs.
Yeah, that's my wheelhouse right there. I love all that stuff. I've read all of Jordan Peterson's books. I've listened to pretty much everything he's put out. I've read Carl Jung, listened to all kinds of these lectures and everything about all that stuff. So that's what my view on individualism has absolutely changed as a result. And it's really changed my life completely because I decided to stop blaming anyone else but myself for everything that, even if something happens that that's not your fault, your best course of action is, how am I insufficient and how can I rectify that? And that's all you have.
Will Smith did this little thing where it's like this little TED talk kind of thing. He's like, there's a difference between what's your fault versus what's your responsibility. It may not be your fault that shit happened to you, but it's your responsibility to get back up, dust yourself off, and go give it a try again. That's part of what you gotta do. I mean, lose your job, and there's some things you gotta do. You might be hungry for a little bit, but you eventually have to go find your new job. You need to go find something else to pay the bills. You can't just sit there and wait the bills pile up and not do anything. You have to. You lose a job, you have to go find a new one. That's just part of that.
Yeah. And I think
So
that's what the Libertarian Party should focus on. Anyway, go ahead, DeAndre.
Yes, because the happiness doctrine is what's killing America. And so coming forward towards a fulfillment and responsibility and saying, look what I built. Like, ever anybody's made an art thing or done any construction and a sign on it, that something you did something with your hands and go, wow, I did this. Like, I built a house. You look back at the house, I built this house. Isn't that so cool? I mean, you have something you can say, well, all your life, I built that house, or painted something or sculpted, like something you say, hey, I did this, and I can show people I did that. And the fulfillment is so much more important. And you have to be, the only way to get to fulfillment is by being disciplined and responsible. I mean, like we're talking about, like, exercise is you might not like exercise at the beginning, but after a while it gets easier and you see results from it. And then it gets to a point where, okay, this is fun now, or this is part of what I'm doing because I can see the results I'm getting from it.
So as to the policy of the Libertarian Party, there are a couple questions that come to mind, particularly for a person like me. Number one is, what is the Libertarian Party's platform as it relates to constitutionality in the United States? And that's on books of on really anything. What I suppose a better way to put the question is, what is the importance of the Constitution to the Libertarian Party as that makes it different from the Democrat and Republican parties?
So I would say we make that we want the government smaller. And the time of the government was during the time of the founding fathers, obviously it was a lot smaller then. So respecting the 10th Amendment, for instance, 10th Amendment says it was what's not listed here is a part of the states, and the 9th Amendment says you have more rights than we have listed. 9th Amendment says just because we didn't put it as a list of one of the 10 Amendment first to the Bill of Rights, you have more rights beyond than what we just said. Like your freedom to privacy and not be spied on, like the surveillance state, that comes to, you could go towards the 9th Amendment and say, hey, this is where that falls. Or 10th Amendment is like, where education, how do you follow that? Well, there was never a national education system in time of the founding fathers. Their kids were actually way more educated than we are now, even though they had less technology. They knew their Bible thoroughly. They spoke Latin, Greek, and other languages. They were well versed in language. They were versed in science. They had up to that point. They were well versed in that too. It's not like, and so the school systems were a lot better, especially then, than the whole nationalization of like education. And so there's other systems like that follow that example.
Okay.
I don't know so much. See, there was a lot of people from that time period who were very uneducated and didn't know anything. It's the ones we know about were the most educated because they're the ones who founded the country. And they were probably the most intelligent because they did all this. I'm pretty sure most of what they were probably autodidactic to a large degree. I don't know if it was so much school, but that was certainly part of it.
So there's book smarts and the street smarts. A lot more street smart people know how to farm, they know how to make get animals to do what they want to do when they're dealing with livestock, know how to go from, say, travel, survival. Like you were dealing with, like, before, like modern technology for heating the air, you had to go figure out how to deal with heat and cold naturally, and had to go out and go do things. You can't just stay home and just let it happen. But it's like, I feel like you're talking about responsibility. I feel like nature required more responsibility because those bad weather days, you had to be prepared. You had more. So I think some of our issues are comforts that modern technology has given us.
Right. It's the Red Queen problem. In my kingdom, you have to run as fast as you can just to stay in the same place. That's Mother Nature.
Yeah.
So again, on policy platforms of the party, another big one. I know Rhett's opinions have expanded. I don't want to say changed, but have expanded. What is the policy platform position for Libertarian Party as it relates to healthcare and government involvement in healthcare?
So nobody in Libertarian Party wants people sick. Nobody wants anybody hurt and wants to be able to access to healthcare. Just because we don't want government doing this, something you don't want it to happen. And so we do think that some things like having a transparent subscription system, for instance, might be a better deal in ways knowing exactly what you're being charged in your medical deal. I mean, the way it is now, you get an ambulance, they're charging you the moment you're in the ambulance until the time you're discharged, but they don't tell you what you're getting charged for with the whole system. And so I think with more freedom market, you can say, okay, what exactly does this trip from the ambulance cost me? What if they put blood in me because I need blood transfusion? How much is that going to cost me? It's not going to be secret hidden fees and then because it's giant thousands of dollars of bill to you. You actually know, okay, I have a budget. It's like you'll be able to insure yourself because you know exactly what the costs are, as opposed to having price fixing through the insurance companies. Insurance companies will say, hey, we'll pay a certain price for 20 heart transplants, and that's a set price for those 20 heart transplants, and they don't get adjusted until those 20 hearts are done, taken care of, and then because it's really just it's still price fixing, but it's in the back. We're not in charge. We don't get to negotiate those contracts when it comes to our own medical care. I think that is part of the cost. We have more negotiating power when it comes to paying for our Medicare, that we will actually have we can be able to manage the price of Medicare, more access.
Okay, and so I guess another one of the big platform issues that we see a lot is the idea of taxation. Yes. What is the platform that most adheres to the Libertarian Party on when it comes to taxation?
It's simple. Taxation's theft. That's one of the few things that we agree with. So the idea is nobody wants to pay taxes, and they take it anyways. If you were asking me for money and I said no, and you took it from me anyways, that's called theft. And just because government does it doesn't mean it's not theft because they force you to pay. The first question is like, well, what about the roads? If it's something that's important, something I actually want in my life, I'm still gonna pay for it. Like through utilities, I like having my lights on. I'm gonna go pay the bill for utilities so my lights can stay on. I'm not gonna just not pay the bills just because, oh, whatever. But I think this idea that we have to pay for things, and then what happens is they collect the taxes and then they decide which areas they spend it on. It's not like they say, hey, this dollar goes to education, that dollar goes to defense. They decide themselves what dollar goes where. I think having more voluntarism, you have more say in where that dollar goes. And so if it's a policy they're trying to push on us that we don't like, we can just defund it, that single specific policy, or they'll force them to actually explain it to it better, as opposed to just, oh, this is how it is.
Okay, and another one on the issue of policy and platform. One of the big things that's I know that we talked about with Alden is America's involvement militarily with so much of the rest of the world.
Yes.
What is the policy platform of the Libertarian Party as it relates to America's military? Are we to be more expansive? Are we to be more protective of the rest of the world, or should America's military be more relegated to domestic affairs?
So this might not be the phrasing other libertarians would use, but I do believe in the whole America first idea. It goes beyond that. It's not just America first, it's my state first, it's me first. Make sure my stuff is taken care of first. And so if they're sending money to selling our oil to China, supposed to put that oil into our economy. Why is China getting our oil when we already have high gas prices? That's not going to affect our gas prices. We need oil here now. How about we just talking about how Biden's been selling our oil to China instead of putting that into our economy. And so whether it's guns or foreign aid, giving other countries our resources when we need to fix ourselves first. I don't think that's nationalist. I think that's common sense. If you're hungry, you can feed yourself first. Before, I mean, when you go in an airplane, when those little masks pop up, they tell you to put on the mask, your mask first before you help the other person. Because if you're suffocating, how can you help the other person who's suffocating too? You get yourself taken care of when you put on those masks, and you can help the next person. And so it's not selfish in the sense of we don't care about everybody else. It's more that's how the correct order of things is. You take care of yourself, and once you're good, you have the strength and ability to help others. And it's easier to help people when you're not hurt yourself.
Okay, but how does that relate to the policy decision? I know that you said you want to do America first, which I am all for America first. But as far as the military is concerned, their presence in the rest of the world, their presence here, how should that be handled? And according to the party's platform, I mean, are we supposed to be a police state for everybody else, or
I'll say no. And most
military?
times we say no to that. We definitely don't believe in policing the world. We don't believe in sending money and troops to like Ukraine. That's not. We will definitely be against that. Like the war on terror, like the Afghanistan, Iraq, we had troops there way too long. You should not and get involved in issues. If someone says, "I want your help," specifically say, "I want your help," is one thing. It's another thing to say, "Oh, we're just gonna be in there," and just force ourselves and get people go our route or my way the highway kind of thing.
Okay, and I guess you kind of touched on this a little bit when we talked about taxation, but the idea of infrastructure is very tied into taxation.
Yes.
It's hard to separate the two, but we do need to have certain methods of infrastructure. So how does the Libertarian Party, with the idea of taxation being theft, how do you raise the issue for infrastructure? How do you raise the money for that, if not through some form of taxation?
So I think my issue is not so much the raising the money, it's allocation of money. That's different. That's slightly different. I mean, because what happens is government will raise the money for roads all the time, but then they'll add a bunch of junk to those bills, and then the money goes elsewhere, and then we need to go ahead and get the money again, do more taxes, and because it's a cycle where they'll have like in the coast in Biloxi, we have had roads that have been under construction for 10 years because
I've been saying that for a long time.
Yeah, they collect the taxes and then misallocate it to the companies, or they just do a little bit, just enough to keep the process of their construction company, wherever their friends who is building the roads, that take the time to squeeze more money out of the government, and they take it themselves. And that's somebody stealing from me, stealing from you, when they do it like that. So if you have more control on a local level, you can say, "Hey, I want my road paved, like your driveway. So you want that paved. You don't expect that to take 10 years. You want it done quick. So if it's yours, you make sure it happens a lot faster. If you go to a Walmart parking lot, and the one that, especially it was a spot that it's just busy, like Walmart's getting a lot of money out of that spot. Those parking lots are always taken care of a lot better than any road than, say, like I said, like Division Street in Biloxi, that's been under construction for a long time. But you go to private property And see their parking lots, they're always better maintained than the private roads, than the government roads. And
Well, yeah, I could see that because I talk about that a lot. But so, as opposed to saying allocation, would you say that that the the issue is more or less the time consumed? Uh, because for using the example that you gave, the road's taken 10 years and still looks like looks the same way it did 10 years ago. Would
yeah,
it be an
or
issue not so
worse.
much of the allocation? Yeah, in many cases worse. Would it not be an issue so much of the allocation as opposed to the amount of time that has been allotted to get the job done?
Yeah. Um, I'm not. I think the better way to fix that is that, hey, maybe put in penalties that, hey, you don't put it. If you don't, like in a contract, normal contract, person to person, say, hey, if you're behind schedule at such time, then you're not going to get paid. Simple as that. Or you might, the person who's building might incur some kind of penalty for taking so long on building your project, like building a house or building a hospital or something like that. Or a new casino on the coast. Casinos on the coast, like I said, those 10 years of the road being crap, we've had 5 new casinos since then. And so private property clearly shows that when you own the property, make sure the builders you hire do really honor the contract. And so make sure the people honor the contract with the government. If they don't honor the contract, they might fire those people and then, oh, we still need the money again to go get that done.
Okay. And what is the policy platform of the Libertarian Party when it comes to welfare and other social programs?
We lean towards charity over welfare. I mean, it's not saying we don't want to help poor people. We do want to help poor people, but it's more of, I think it's better to force sharing. When I think welfare, something is like forced sharing, because you're telling people you have to give to this person. That person may have, in an individual level, if that person was bad to you, you're not going to want to give to them. Someone was a jerk to you and you may not want to help them out, but the next guy was super nice. You want to help the nice guy. And so, or you might by force share might take more out of your mouth and make you hungry. There might be a meal that you could have used. And when they pick and choose they pick the winner and chooser who gets that welfare, who doesn't get the welfare. I mean, you got corporate welfare and you got individuals like food stamps, and picking and choose in both ends. You're picking and choosing who gets to win, who gets to lose by going through this process of who can get food stamps, who can't. I mean, you're choosing who gets to be hungry, who doesn't. And sometimes you're making more people hungry because people are on the edge of that, might end up taking enough taxes out of them. They end up poor later because they're taking more from them what they need to sustain their own selves.
Okay. You have any other questions, Rhett?
No, I don't think so. I was gonna end it with, if somebody was to want to get involved with the Mississippi Libertarian Party, how could they go about doing that?
So our website, the names may not be accurate, but we've had the emails. I get them directly, and when I get new members, I see them myself. And so I could direct you, say what county you're from. You do the paperwork online when you subscribe on the website. I do get the emails myself, and so to direct folks, say, hey, you got a county this where, that county already has a party, go talk to so-so. Or you want to do grassroots stuff, or we have a project here, like Alden, it's gonna need people to help him out, to help promote him. Eventually it's gonna need people to go knock doors for him eventually. And so we have projects pushing for like the opt-in, what do you call it? The medical marijuana stuff where they sometimes try and establish dry counties we're doing grassroots stuff there too, trying to help people overturn those opt-outs, trying to get people to maintain their rights with that. So we have projects we're working on. We are trying to do things, the grassroots level. Yeah, I would say also on Facebook, you just want to talk to us and just say, maybe you want more information than we've got today. So you could come reach us on Facebook, on all platforms, on Twitter. So on every form of social media, we have social media guys decent, pretty good helping us out with that.
Are y'all ever, what if somebody wanted to get involved with running a campaign or helping to run or manage one?
I would say just, again, reach out to their website, and we have a whole community to help, just help folks with that. And so we have people who are, that's their jobs, to help people with that kind of thing.
That's all I got.
Okay.
I guess my final question would be, two final questions, and as a two-parter was, what is the number one social issue and the number one federal issue that the Libertarian Party seeks to solve within this election cycle?
Social issue, right now, like I said, we just legalized medical marijuana in Mississippi, so the drug war is up forefront of our minds. A lot of us during our got petitions to get that happened. A lot of us are talk about that. When we talk to average Joes, I think I'm the only state chair that actually actively knocked doors for that. I don't know Democrats or Republicans. I don't think they did. We've been actively in helping people get the medicine. Basically, help grandmas and babies get medicine. That's the whole focus of that kind of grassroots organization, is help people get the medicine.
And what about the number one federal issue for the Libertarian Party?
Federal issue, economy, inflation, and this idea that you can just spend your way out of inflation is retarded. It's just, you're not going to get you're not going to just, oh, let's increase prices of gas and that's going to fix inflation. That's not going to get you there. I think the price of food is a big deal. Motivating people to do things.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on to the show. We'd love to have you back on the show again.
Okay.
Probably do a little bit more formal. We wanted to make this feel as homely as possible, because I think that type of environment is what voters are looking for. We want to feel welcome, feel more willing to be accessible to
Yes.
to voters. So
Yes.
this type of format, but the next time will probably be a little bit more focused, a little bit more routine.
Okay.
Just to narrow it down, because now that you've invited us into the home, now it's time for us to start asking the questions and things like that.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you would like to mention before we close?
I should remind folks that we do have a candidate this year, is Alden. Make sure that people know we do have a choice other than Dupree and what's the other guy's name? The Republican. Huh?
Ezel.
Ezel, yes. Reminding people there's other folks to vote for in the 4th district. And so if you don't like the two-party system, we have an option this time around, this cycle. And so that's pretty much it, though.
Okay, well, again, thank you, Mario. I don't want to mess up your last name. I had it on the tip of my tongue, and
It's
I'm
Mario Lozano.
Mario Lozano.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on to our show. You're free to go. Me and Red are going to close up, and you're free to go. We're going to close and do our little thing that we usually do at the end of these things on our streams.
Okay. Have a good day.
You too. So that was a really good interview. I like the interview. I like the style of that interview. Um, but so you're more into Libertarian Party than I am. Do you think that the Libertarian Party has a chance this time around?
What do you mean? Federally, state?
Just state here within Mississippi.
No. I mean, that's just my most honest answer. I don't. It's just Mississippi is a, hardcore conservative red state. And Alden's stance on some issues are not in line with what I think Mississippi voters are looking for. Then apparently he's not even a supporter of the Mises Caucus, which is the group that runs the party now. And I think that a Mises Caucus candidate would have a better chance.
You know what? I should have asked this question while he was still here. But for our viewers, explain the Mises Caucus.
The Mises Caucus is, they call themselves the Libertarian wing of the Libertarian Party. And they got their roots are in the Ron Paul revolution. So they are pro-life, in favor of borders, free market, maximum freedom. That's the gist of it.
You wouldn't say that they're maximum freedom to the same degree that anarchists is, huh?
Well, they're not anarchists, but limited state power, federalism, states' rights. They're very classically liberal. But using that word, people just don't know what it means. So, but I think that their messaging is actually going to be pretty good, because some of their most prominent members are, like, for example, Dave Smith. He's a famous comedian who is a very outspoken Mises Caucus member. The president of the party, who just got elected, is from what I've seen, she's going to be pretty good. But I think the party was infected with wokeness before the Mises Caucus took over, and the Mises Caucus is not woke at all. They're anti-woke.
Yeah, go. It's like you guys said, go woke, go broke, and it's true. It is true. I guess I just did my review of Jurassic World Dominion. Go woke, go broke, because I don't know if you've watched it yet.
No, I'm probably not going to. I haven't even seen Jurassic World.
It is not it's not a film for the fans. It's a film for people who want to be entertained. Like I told him. Now there are stuff in the movie that fans will get a kick out of, that fans will enjoy. Like the Barbasol can from the first movies in this movie for some reason. It doesn't explain how it got in the movie, doesn't explain what it's doing there. It's just there. It's still covered in mud from 30 years ago. But this culture that we have going on right now, they've ruined so much of the things that we find to be quality. And I guess that's the reason why when you told me last night that you went to go see Hamilton, I was thinking that you went to see the version of it that was bastardized by the New Yorkers.
I'm completely unaware of. I don't even know what you were talking about. It's the same Hamilton that it's always. I don't know anything about a bastardized version of it, because it's a musical. It has
I know that, but there was a lot of controversy about Hamilton a couple of years ago. I think it might have been 2 or 3 years ago. There was a lot of controversy about Hamilton, the musical, and the left hated it. They wanted to boycott it, and they wanted to change parts of it. Because they're always like, oh, Hamilton had slaves, this yada yada yada, blah blah
But he
blah.
didn't though. He never owned slaves. He was poor. He was born the Caribbean out of wedlock. They just don't know.
And the leftists they're just dumb, and so they almost, like I said, they basically bastardized it to the mindsets of Americans, and most people, Hamilton. I mean, I've never went to go see it, but I hear that it's a good experience to have. How would you rate?
Yeah,
How would you
I
rate?
was.
What would you rate?
I don't like musicals at all. I'm not a musical person, but it was really worth it.
How
I
would you rate the experience as an experience that an American should experience once in a lifetime?
Yes, I would say absolutely.
Between a 1 through 10, what would you put it?
Okay, what would 10 represent?
10, 10 represents you most definitely need to view this at least once in your lifetime as an American, with one
Okay,
being that it's not necessary as
10. I would say it's a 10, at least a 9. I think it's definitely because it's also, for fans of hip hop, especially because it's the first hip hop Broadway musical. And there's all kinds of different classical rap references throughout it. Like there's references to
hip
like
hop musical.
Grandmaster Flash. There's references to Grandmaster Flash, Biggie, um, different songs by them, Mobb Deep, all
See,
different
I
classic
would
hip
not
hop.
have I would not have expected that out of Hamilton. I mean, like I said, I've never seen it, so I would not have expected it to be hip hop related.
Yeah, that's what the whole thing. It's the whole thing is rap.
I was thinking it was going to be more Metropolitan Opera,
No, the whole thing is rap.
which I love
Do
Metropolitan
you
Opera, but
have you listened to any of the tracks from it?
no, I've never listened to it at all.
Yeah.
I've seen reviews, but the reviews that I've watched have never actually played any sound from it. They've just shown images.
Yeah, that's a mistake. It's really good.
You know, we didn't do our 4th of July thing, so I'm gonna do the last. Let's see what time is. Is we'll close this at I'll close this at 9 o'clock even. So we'll do the last 15 minutes. Um, do something dedicated to our country's birth. So this 4th of July, I think this is probably the most tragic 4th of July that we've ever had as far as the country's feeling. And in recent years, this has probably been one of the best examples of the 4th of July independence, because of the several cases in the Supreme Court that we have gotten constitutional victories in. But as far as the country feeling, I think this is probably the most divisive 4th of July that we have ever had. The left burning the American flag. They do this every year, just about. Uh, it's saddening because you see nothing on the media about the history of our country, about the greatness of our country, and about why the 4th of July still represents so much importance. And these young people, you know, I'm not saying that I want to have year-round school, but these young people, they don't get taught uh, to celebrate America. And so, unless you have something like, like Black History Month, where that's where they focus on Black history, uh, unless you have something that focuses on American history, like like a 4th of July day. For I don't see this generation been given the same level of clarity and comprehension to the 4th as we did.
That's a
I
direct
don't think
result of public schools. And they think that they're learning, so they don't investigate, or they're just not interested or too lazy to learn on their own. Or they're incapable. But the public school system is one of the biggest reasons for that. It's made people stupid.
without doubt it is. I think it was designed. I won't say that they designed it all the way back when, but most definitely over the last 40 years, it has been designed to make our kids dumber. And
It's just to
fortunately,
make factory workers who can't think.
yeah, fortunately, there are people like you and I, other people that we know that are willing to think for themselves and actually get enjoyment out of learning new things outside of school. And as a matter of fact, I think that had you and I not ever had to go to school, we'd probably be significantly smarter at this time in our life than we are right now. Because I don't know if it's for you, but for me, the more I was forced to do schoolwork, the more I hated doing it. But on my own time, when I'm reading and writing and researching my own stuff, I could sit there and learn for hours on end without stopping. And I guess to that degree, that might be what Mario was saying about how they were a little bit better educated then than we are now, despite the technology differences. Is because they allowed themselves to learn. They got
Yeah,
enjoyment out
but
of it.
the point I was trying to make is that we have a skewed perception of history. We don't know how smart the average common person was. They probably weren't very educated at all compared to the common person now, because there was no internet. The people that we know about, of course, were extremely intelligent because they are the ones who shaped the present that we live in now. But it's true that the most
Absolutely.
educated people back then, comparatively speaking, were better educated than the most educated people now.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that because according to the history, it was outlawed for many of them to read in certain areas, certain not so much here in the United States, but before they came to the United States, it was outlawed for many of them to read. And so to try to say that their education would have been uh at a natural level would have been higher than ours is now. This isn't the case. But when you compare the tops of their echelons to the tops of our echelons, well, they were they were geniuses in an entirely different league. I mean, we still have to turn to their work in order to get done anything that we do. Everything that we do is just a slight modification or improvement to what they did.
Yes, it's hard to know when you have, I don't think most people ever have a single original thought at all. It's a very, and I think, for example, when it comes to people like us, we might have one every once in a while. But most of the things that we even think and write about are based on the ideas of others who came before. Every once in a while, maybe when we're writing something, we might think something that's original. But I don't think the majority of people ever have any original thoughts.
Even in writing the fiction, they're all inspired by other things that we have read.
Yeah,
And
well, we wouldn't be able to understand it otherwise. We have to have a lens through which we take in new knowledge, and what came before is the best way to interpret the present and the future.
yeah, and I like how he brought up Greece, and I was talking about this with one of our with the guests we talked with on Friday. That What made America so unique was the fact that they were able to pull so much knowledge from so many different cultures that predated us, and in many cases have forewritten how we should go as far as our downfall would be. And these guys, these our founders, they just took it to a level uh so far and beyond what anything has ever been seen in history. I mean, sure, we had the Copernicus system, we had the Platos, we had uh what's the other one? I can't remember his name, but he was another Grecian philosopher.
They distilled all of that knowledge down into a single
Yeah,
system. And
Aristotle, we had the Egyptians, we had all of, all of them. They had all these wonderful cultures and ideals, but they, like you said, uh, they America really became the avatar, or and I say avatar in the sense of not like the Avatar, Last Airbender, all that stuff. I mean avatar in the sense of it's become pretty much the golem or a beacon of just pure idea, molded down throughout the generations into one single solitary being, and then refined over and over again to almost like creating the perfect liquor, where they've just distilled it over and over again until it's been made into the most delicious form of alcohol you could ever drink. America sort of became that, but because of the bastardization of our history and the lack of celebration of history, the lack of teaching of history, just like a fine wine that is left without its cork, it has staled, soured, and in many cases it has spoiled. And America
so
is becoming more and more like that.
this is something interesting to put a little bit into perspective. So you remember the fourth turning that I was talking about with the cycles of generations, the four cycles?
Yeah.
There's the prophet generation. This goes in, there's always four of these archetypes around at all times. This is Anglo-American history. So we go as far back as some of the early monarchies in Britain, all the way up till modern America. But it's the prophet generation, which is the oldest, the nomads, which are middle-aged, the heroes, which are 20s and 30s, mid 20s to late 30s or mid 30s, and then the artist generation, which is the youngest. And in the cycle in which the revolution fell, the hero generation was most of the founding fathers in 1776. So they were the millennials of their day, but there was only a few of them. That the same goes for like World War II. The people who fought in World War II were the hero generation of their day. So we actually are the hero generation, the modern corresponding generation. So obviously the founders were all over the place, but Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr and several of these people were in their 20s and 30s in 1776. But that's usually the role. It's always the role of the generation that falls in that bracket during a crisis, which Thomas Paine referred to as the American crisis, the first one. We're in a crisis right now. And, people are, we are in the hero generation, for better or worse. There's certainly most millennials, I think, are not heroic at all. But some of us are going to have to step up to the plate and make sure that we get through this.
I would absolutely say that most millennials if let's put this into something that millennials can understand. Video games. Most millennials are quest NPCs where
Well, that's
they
just
have a
most people in
mission.
general.
Yeah, that's true. But they have a mission that they give to us, the hero, or sometimes they give to
The player
sometimes they
characters,
give
yeah.
to the villain, or the antithesis or the antagonist. They give that mission there, and they want something to be done. And you know what? And that's the case for government. How government has operated. We, the NPCs, have given the government a task to do, and uh, one of my favorite games, as far as story is concerned, that's not so much the gameplay of it. Final Fantasy 2. Not a lot of people have played that one, but Final Fantasy 2, Emperor Matthias, or other people call him Emperor Palamecia, uh, he took over the world because they gave him pretty much the power to do so. He took over everything, and they gave him so much power and authority, but he never used his power and authority to do what the people wanted him to do. And so then the player character, Furion, the protagonist, and his areas come around. Well, they go around learning all these keywords and all these other stuff, trying to do things that the people want to be done. And government has become sort of Emperor Palamecia, where we they started off. Well, you know what? I'll use something even um, less obscure. uh Star Wars. Everybody in our generation has watched Star Wars, or at least heard of Star Wars. Emperor Palpatine in the prequels, he started off, of course he planned the whole thing, but he started off saying he loves democracy. He wants to help. He does everything he wants to do is to help. He's going to take up the mantle of Supreme Chancellor until the war is finally over. And then
Yeah,
once it's
like
done,
he's doing everybody a favor.
he's going to lay down the power of the Supreme Chancellor once it's done. And eventually he swayed the people so much, including when he records the Jedi that come to arrest him, and he records them, and they're like, "Oh, so it's treason. The Jedi want to take over," and he's convinced all of the people and the Republic that this has always been a plot of the Jedi. And it's been a plot of you've given us this power, and now the only way to help is to give us absolute power. That's the only way to help. And then, of course, the Republic becomes the Galactic Empire. And then now you're stuck with all the rebel NPCs that are trying to get back onto the right side of history. But we've seen this generation give so much of that power to the empire, that and not to mention that there are so few of us player characters, hero archetypes out here.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is it's the whole generation is a hero generation, but it's still a small select group of that generation that actually ends up becoming the heroes. Everyone has the chance, but few take up the mantle.
And some people say, well, we called World War II generation the greatest generation because they put the risk their lives to do it all.
Yeah.
The
Well, they were the millennials of their cycle.
you know the, here's the sad thing about it. The repetition of history has happened much faster than either one of us could have ever foreseen. Normally when we think of history repeating itself, we don't typically think less than 100 years. And with World War III right around the corner, I mean, I sent you a message on Facebook You never did respond to it, but with the assassination of the former prime minister of Japan, the parallels to Franz Ferdinand, the parallels to everything that happened in the Great War, or World War One, and then World War Two. We've already been saying that we're technically in World War III right now. We just haven't done it actively yet. But now that assassination has happened, an assassination of a Japanese leader, no less, which hasn't happened in a long time.
Yeah, well, I think the difference is the guy who killed him was also Japanese. And that wasn't the case. That was a member of the Black Hand, who killed a member of a terrorist organization. Now, it may come out that this guy did have some sort of ties to maybe the Chinese Communist Party, but I don't think we know yet. I mean, I don't know. I didn't really see. I didn't really even know who the guy was before, but it just seems like another thing added on to that week, last week, because then we had the bombing of the Georgia Guidestones, which has been described as a monument to globalism. And I think, if anything, it's symbolic, because I think the liberal world order, or the new world order, is unraveling very quickly, because the people who created this idea are long dead. And the people who have taken over the mantle of this new world order are completely incompetent, and they don't know what they're doing. And all that stuff happening together, Boris Johnson stepping down in the UK, it all just seems like symbolic of the collapse of the world order. Because the whole point of them starting this new world, or liberal world order, was to prevent World War III, and it looks like they've done the exact opposite.
Maybe it's a sign of the collapse of the West. Or are we still able to divert that pending crisis?
I think so, but not without a lot of pain. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of suffering.
And when you say pain, what is your idea? Because I have an idea of the pain.
At the very least, it's going to be economic depression like we've never seen. At the very least. But that will likely trigger full-blown civil war in the West, especially in the United States, which could be followed by a balkanization, or the Union staying intact. But Europe is already pretty much dying because of takeover from refugees from Islamic countries.
Yeah. Europe lost a sense of identity a long time ago. And, because, again, the liberal world order, I suppose what has been America's saving grace is that it is a part of the Western world removed from the Western world by what, 3,000, 4,000 miles of ocean. And
well, because of our distance, we had to learn how to fend for ourselves.
Yeah,
but it's also a geographic advantage, because we're so far away from people. It's hard for them to attack us without missiles.
But not only that, but that geographic advantage has also forestalled our decline longer than has Europe's. Europe's decline probably started, what, 50 years ago?
Yeah, at least. But I don't believe there's any hope for Europe in the long run. I still think the United States, maybe not even but Canada, I think is pretty much on par with Europe, except Canada also has a geographic advantage as well.
Canada has an opportunity if they can get if they can remove themselves from Trudeau, if Canada has a real opportunity, but the Canadians are very much like the French. They're submissive, and I don't see the Canadians changing without the inception of
You know,
Versailles.
Quebec had a chance to join the revolution, but they chose not to. It could have been 14 colonies.
I mean that just goes back to what I'm saying. I don't see Canada. I don't see Canada breaking free without their history repeating. It's still them still being French and having Versailles happen in Canada. And I don't mean that I want to see a bloodbath in Canada. I really don't. But I don't see Canada uh separating and becoming free of that without that happening.
We have the culture and the system to still manage to prevail in the long run, I think. Because our history is a history of surviving and rising up out of the ashes and rebelling against corruption. That's just in our DNA.
We really do have a chance. And I have been, I don't know about you, but I have been my optimism has been increased with this sudden victories that we've got with this constitutionality and the Supreme Court's rulings. My
Yeah,
optimism in America
that's
has been
that's what I was
increased.
trying to convey
Looking
the other day.
looking at looking at the political races that are happening right now. Not so much that I'm a Republican, but the types of Republicans that are being elected to office now has restored my confidence and faith somewhat. And
I think
it's
I
good to
think
see
if
that.
Trump gets in 2024, and then after that we get 2 terms of DeSantis, we could be in really good shape at the end of that.
You know, I've been saying this for the last I don't know how many episodes about who can run. At this point, I don't think there is anybody else that should run but Trump and DeSantis.
Yeah, they pretty much. I think they have it on lock, but I think one more Trump term would be better with DeSantis as the VP, because Trump will clean house as soon as he gets in, and then DeSantis can start from a clean slate.
Speaking of cleaning house, uh, what do you think about Elon Musk backing out of Twitter deal?
I'm not that surprised, but I also think that this is definitely not over yet, because Twitter is going to attempt to take him to court. And it's the reason why he backed out of the deal is because they refused to provide him with critical information. And so if they go to court and a judge orders Twitter to give him the information, then
Musk wins. He wins either
yes.
way.
If he
I think
doesn't, he
it's
just has to pay the $1 billion. But the thing is, Twitter refused to give him the information he requested about the total real user count and perhaps even deeper stuff than just that. But the problem is Twitter is not worth $44 billion. It's worth
it's
like
barely worth
less than 25 billion. So
you know what this actually winds up doing. This actually plays to Trump's favor. I don't know if Elon Musk intended for that to happen, but it plays to Trump's favor because now with Twitter's about to die. If they
yeah,
take this challenge legally, they will die. And Trump becomes the only platform left that's Twitter like.
well, the CEO Parag Agrawal, he already said they're gonna force Musk to keep this deal, and I see that going to court and a judge
And the deal,
ordering
of
Twitter to give
discovery.
up the information.
And
And
if they do that, then the stock price is going to tank. And what's going to wind up happening is if Musk doesn't buy Twitter and Twitter only has to pay out with the $1 billion, well, the shareholders and anybody who's purchased stock will be able to sue the hell out of Twitter, and Twitter will file bankruptcy and die.
yep, that's pretty much what it looks like to me.
then Trump's market shares for Truth Social, they've gone up 30%, which is telling, because everything else in the market has turned to crap. I don't know if you've seen this with the latest cryptocurrencies, but uh, this is Bitcoin as of right now, and it is not pretty.
Well,
Bitcoin right now is at 20,000.
yeah, but it's also, you have to look at it from the
20,500.
perspective of it's also higher than its previous low, or higher than its
But
previous high.
but no, what I mean by this is that when I purchased my stock in Bitcoin just a few weeks ago, it was almost 40,000.
Now's the time to buy.
Now it's at 20,000 and it's still going down. And it's not the only thing that's going down. I mean, every other stock market price is going down significantly. Apple's down, AT&T is down. AT&T is down to $20 a share. $20 a share. Warner Brothers is down. HP is down. I mean, Tesla is down by over $300. You know, when I
It
first
says it's
started buying
up right
stock,
now.
it's up by 2.5%. But overall, over the last couple of months, it's down by $300. When I first started buying stock in Tesla, Tesla's stock price was over $1,000 a share. Now it's at $754. And so it says something that in this economic downfall, that Truth Social is able to gain 30% increase in shares just because of Twitter's downfall. And Trump has a good opportunity here. All he has to do is continue to make Truth Social a beacon of free speech, and he can have it in the books. And he can, you know, I didn't think it was going to be possible for Trump to actually really compete with Twitter. I thought Twitter was too big. I thought Trump's Truth Social was going to be around for a little while and that they would kill it like they did Parler. But because of what Elon Musk has done, Trump's Truth Social, Google and Apple and all of the other things that decided to shut down Parler may have no choice but to keep Truth Social, because they won't have Twitter. And if they don't have Truth,
We need to
significantly.
It's 9:15.
Yeah,
I still got to eat dinner and go to bed.
I'm about to do a show with Jay as well, a Christian episode. So with that being said, I think I'd like to thank everybody for watching us. And again, we thank our guest Mario Loren. I can't even say his name right. Let me see how did I write it down? Mario Lozano. Yeah, that's his name. Mario Lozano. We'd like to thank him again for joining us. We'd like to thank you all for watching us. And if you are interested in helping the Mississippi Libertarian Party, go to their website, go to their Facebook, reach out, see how you can get involved. Because at the end of the day, if we want to take our country back, it's going to take ideas from all sides. We cannot stick in this prison of two ideas. We cannot stick in Republican and Democrats. As much as we hope to see Republicans win right now, because they seem to be the party that's on the side of the Constitution and on the side of freedom, we cannot put all our eggs in one basket. We simply cannot. Every idea matters. So if you are looking for a political party and the Libertarian Party sounds like the party for you, do your due diligence, do some research, reach out to them and see if it's your fit. Anything
And
else you
look
want
into
to
the
say?
Mises Caucus, because the Mises Caucus now controls the Libertarian Party. So LP Mises, LPMC is the Facebook group for the Mises Caucus. But I'm sure they have a website also, but that is the Libertarian Party now. They are the party.
Yes. And with that, we thank you again for joining us. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Maybe not too much longer, depending on how it goes, but follow us on Truth Social, on Rumble, on all the other ones. And we will see you all Wednesday with an interview with Carl Boyenton and his version of the Super PAC. Is that what it's called? Super PAC?
He's got the Conservative Candidate Caucus Super PAC. It's a PAC that he just started. So I'm guessing he's going to get involved with endorsing and getting behind funding campaigns and stuff like that.
I'm actually very interested in talking to him about this one.
Yeah, that's why I got a hold of him, because I saw that he changed his campaign website or his campaign Facebook page to a page for this political action committee. So yeah, he started his own. He's the CEO.
Well, I mean, he has the money to do it. And, you know, people, it, Carl Boy, I don't want to make this longer than it needs to be, but Carl Boyenton and really everybody that we've spoken to, in our interviews, these are the type of people that are showing each one of you, our viewers and our listeners, that the smallest person, the smallest amount of difference, the smallest amount of change can really affect the course of our nation. Having these ideas and having the guts to follow through with them. These are the type of landscape changing ideas that really can make a difference. Our show, for example, is another one of those things. I don't want to make us more important than we are, but it is true that following through with doing what we're doing right now is just as important as us all going to the polls. Having those ideas be made mainstream and allowing people to get those ideas out there and see other platforms and other visions, that is what makes America America. And so I really do encourage all of you to exercise your ability to choose and choose accurately based on your views with research. Anything you want to say before we go, Rhett? I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. All right. Well, with that, we thank you again, and we'll see you next time.